Testing.
Double check that.
The class.
That's really cool.
My rationale.
Shower because you sleep.
I can't believe it's like almost over. It doesn't start yet. Look at that. Yeah. Probably gonna get more petitions. Hang on. I don't think oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. She's doing everything.
All right. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everybody. Please call the roll. Could we hold off on that for a moment? Before we begin, I'd like to mention that Councilman Kranak attended our caucus meeting but had a commitment at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to make a motion to excuse Councilman Kranak from the council meeting.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Bicker,
Yes.
Biassiata,
Here.
yes.
Yes.
Frondor,
Yes.
Kukrow,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Traffus.
Thank you. Now we'll have the regular roll call.
Who seconded that motion?
Petro.
Mayor Delaquila,
Here.
Director Bob Pignatello,
Here.
Councilman at Large Bicker,
Here.
Councilman at Large Kranak, Councilman at Large Traffus.
Here.
Ward 1 Councilman Biassiata.
Here.
Ward 2 Councilman Frondor.
Here.
Ward 3 Councilman Kukrow.
Here.
Ward 4 Councilman Petro.
Here.
Director of Public Service and Properties Levis.
Here.
Building Commissioner Morrow.
Thank you. Council will now be open to the audience on legislation only. If you have any comments regarding any piece of legislation on our agenda tonight, please approach the podium and state your name and address. Anybody in the second row? Third, fourth, fifth, sixth? Okay. All right, we will now move on to the reading of mayoral veto statement pertaining to ordinance number 93, 2016, dated August 17th, 2016.
Ordinance number 93, 2016 is vetoed. For all the unanswered questions about this ordinance and the following reasons, I cannot support this legislation. Everything else aside, this ordinance is simply bad policy at the worst time imaginable, which was rushed to a Monday council vote where it was passed after just 10 minutes of debate. Please remember that it was placed on council's agenda for the first time only on the prior Friday. Simply because a city may have authority to take an action under home rule doesn't make that action the right thing to do. Seven Hills has major tax issues on the November ballot, including a proposal to more than triple our current fire levy. It makes absolutely no sense at all to alienate our firefighters with this ordinance when their support is essential to passing that levy. This ordinance is widely viewed as retaliation against our firefighters for circulating a petition most of council doesn't like. In response, council voted after just 10 minutes of debate to ask the residents to amend the city charter to bar non-residents from circulating future petitions supporting ballot issues. About half of those firefighters are not city residents. The justification offered by the council president for this move is that, quote, outsiders, end quote, should not, quote, dictate what we do in our city, end quote. I disagree with this characterization. Our firefighters are not, quote, outsiders, end quote, and the use of the word, quote, dictate, end quote, in this context is simply false on its face. The simplest rationale offered for passing this ordinance ignores the fact that there is already a residency requirement for the petition process. No valid petition can reach the ballot unless 5 residents, electors, form a committee and sign off on submitting the petition to the residents. It is completely irrelevant who circulates the petition once that committee acts. Whether the firefighter knocking on your door is a resident or a non-resident doesn't alter the fact that the issue is being presented to you by that committee of 5 residents. I am submitting to the council clerk with this veto a 10-minute audio recording of the council caucus debate on this ordinance before it was passed on an emergency vote on August 8, 2016. 10 minutes simply is not enough time to consider something this important and complicated. A full debate should have been held with all the known and discoverable facts explored in open meetings before council passed this legislation, not afterward. Now the news media is all over this story. One article even compared this legislation to one passed in another city. After charter review and several public readings, it would have been decidedly helpful at a minimum to compare the two beforehand rather than afterward. That's the problem with rushing things for no good reason. Clearly, that single 10-minute discussion left several unanswered and vital information undiscovered. Recognizing this, I suggest removing the emergency provision and proceeding to a first reading instead, so that all this could be studied at least a little bit more. That was rejected, even though this would have left plenty of time to actually review and understand all the facts and for public dialogue. Even with a mayoral veto, this would have also left plenty of time to schedule a voting meeting far enough before the September 10th deadline to send the ballot language to the Board of Elections. Our council simply added it to the agenda over a weekend and passed it on the next Monday after that 10-minute debate. Please remember that any other council dialogue outside a public meeting would violate open meeting laws. Seven Hills has received several Safe City awards because of the great work of our safety forces, including our firefighters. It's wrong to characterize and insult our non-resident firefighters as outsiders. They work every day for the safety of our community and are knowledgeable about Seven Hills and as devoted to our city as any of our most prominent residents. The horrible timing of this move is politically senseless. As I said, the November ballot will include a proposed $1.6 million fire levy, asking our voters to more than triple the current fire levy. Passing such a large increase will require the support of all our firefighters, especially since there are other tax issues on the ballot competing for the limited appetite of our voters for more taxation. What sense does it make to ask our firefighters to support this levy while we insult their hard work and dedication at the same time? There is no question that if council insists on placing this measure on the November ballot, it will work against the fire levy and the income tax rate increase issue. Seven Hills must stop stumbling along from one unforced error to the next, operating at some private fiefdom. I ask council not to create an unnecessary obstacle to passing additional revenue measures we all know are needed. This ordinance requires more consideration before it goes on some future ballot where it could pass, but without damaging other more vital issues. To push it onto the November ballot in such a careless way with practically no public dialogue or understanding all the details will only jeopardize passage of those important tax measures on the same ballot. Signed, Mayor Richard Delaquila.
Thank you. Mayoral veto statement pertaining to ordinance number 93, 2016 has been read. We'll move on to ordinance number 93, 2016, and I just want to remind everybody that we are voting to override the veto by passing in the affirmative this ordinance, should we so decide. Is that correct, Mr. Law Director?
Yes.
Okay. So ordinance number 93, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Frondorf.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and override the mayor's veto of ordinance number 93, 2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Next one. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek. Sorry. Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 93, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the City of Seven Hills, Ohio, a certain charter amendment pursuant to Article 10 of the Charter of the City of Seven Hills, Ohio, for the purpose of amending Article 7, Section 3, petition procedure to require that a circulator of an initiative petition, a referendum petition, or a recall petition be a qualified elector of the City of Seven Hills and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 93, 2016 has been read for its final reading. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Frondorf.
I move that we pass ordinance 93, 2016 and override the mayor's veto.
A second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I and the majority of council cannot agree with Mayor Delaquila's veto of ordinance 93, 2016. Number one, the mayor constantly refers to the timeless of passing legislation to include this charter issue on the ballot as to not allowing sufficient debate. When everyone on council agrees to an issue, you move on. If the mayor doesn't agree, he should say it to council as he is doing so right now with the veto. Quite frankly, the issue was passed on the first reading so as to allow sufficient time considering the mayor's past political motivated veto record and summer recess. This is a system that ultimately the voters will make the decision on the proposed charter amendment, not council, not the mayor. What the system isn't for is for the mayor to go on TV and issue communications to the media without first making his opinions formally known to council. This is how political issues are created and become detrimental to our city. Item 2, the city's charter has 2 distinct sections about petitions being circulated. The first pertains to initiative, referendum, and recall petitions. The second pertains strictly to amendments to the charter petitions. The ballot change that council has asked the voting residents to consider changing is strictly for initiative, referendum, and recall petitions. The recent petitions regarding the mandatory fire department staffing that were nearly exclusively circulated by fire department employees pertain to amendments to the charter. It had nothing to do with what is being proposed to the electorate now. Yes, it goes to reason that the recent fire department petitions were brought up as an example of circulation procedures, but council decided to not consider any change to those procedures so as not to create any type of political issue and to respect the effort of the fire department employees and their beliefs. However, even though this ballot issue represented by ordinance 93, 2016 has nothing to do with a charter amendment, petition as was done by the fire department employees, the mayor is again creating a political obstruction by saying council's actions were because of the fire department employees and putting a label on them as outsiders in council's mind. This ballot issue proposal has not, and will not influence anything that the fire department employees have done or anyone else in the world can do in the future regarding charter amendments. Mayor, you have to stop creating political issues where you keep pitting council against others. This is certainly not the first time, and it's quickly becoming the norm for you. Item 3, in regards to the petition ballot issue itself, Seven Hills is a home rule city. This is why the charter was created by the residents over 50 years ago. Council feels that our voters should decide if they want Seven Hills residents or non-Seven Hills residents, lobbyists, etc., to circulate petitions. Again, only for initiative, referendum, and recall petitions, not charter amendments that was performed by fire department employees. The existing charter allows for people that have absolutely nothing to do with our city to run around and in all likelihood get paid to get signatures on a petition or to have some sort of personal gain. Those petitions ultimately cost Seven Hills big money to verify the signatures and even bigger money to pay for an election. And yes, this is where a term like outsiders that you so incorrectly and politically blatantly threw around can describe a non-Seven Hills resident. Many cities, including Broadview Heights, who mirrors our charter, recently had the voters decide the exact same issue. For information purposes, the Broadview Heights ballot passed with over 80% of the vote. So I guess in summary, I feel that this is not bad policy, as the mayor labels it, and should be placed on the ballot for our residents to decide. I personally respect the mayor for anyone's opinions, and I deplore the political connotation he continually creates. Mayor, the last paragraph of your veto statement reads, I ask council not to create an unnecessary obstacle to passing revenue measures we all know are needed. Mayor, I think you need to look into a mirror long and hard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Petro. Any further comment?
Yes.
Councilman Kukrow.
Thank you very much. Let me give you an example of why this is important. 66% of residents voted in the last election to allow bow hunting in Seven Hills. However, right now as we speak, a group of people are gathering signatures door to door in front of our public buildings as well. And they're attempting to force a ballot issue to overturn the legislation that council has passed that residents' wishes. And this is really good. It's a very good thing. It's the democratic process, and I believe in it 1000%. However, what we don't know yet, is if those people who are collecting the signatures are actual Seven Hills residents. And we won't know until the petition is turned in. So let me play a hypothetical there. It's a scenario. What if the people gathering petitions for the deer issue are not from Seven Hills? Instead, they're paid or volunteer workers who live in Columbus or Avon or Bedford. So the question is it okay for someone outside of our city who is not vested in our city, who might be paid to do so or not, force our city to spend time and money to defend the decisions that we've already made under our own home rule? Or does it make more sense that you should simply have to be a resident of the city to affect change in your city? I'd rather see our residents control how we run our city, not some paid lobbyist from Columbus or some other city. And that's all this is. Furthermore, as Councilman Petro said, this issue was recently voted on in nearby Broadview Heights with over 80% of the residents agreeing that they don't want lobbyists with no vested interest in their city coming door to door and trying to force them to change what they already do. Ultimately, I'm voting to override this veto because, once again, all this is doing is putting this decision into the hands of our residents at the ballot box. They will decide if they agree with the majority of council or the mayor. And Mr. Mayor, there's no need for more discussion on this because the majority of council agrees that we should let the residents decide. The question is, why are you so against letting residents vote on the issue? I simply don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Kukrow. Any further comment regarding this?
I have a few comments.
Councilman Frondorf?
Thank you, Council President Tracus. I'm going to start by saying I mentioned it in the caucus room. I was out of the country. I was in Europe actually for the last 2 weeks, and purposely left my cell phone, computer at home. Didn't read a newspaper, didn't watch television, and took in the sights and sounds of Europe. And I purposely did that because I felt that I needed to get away for a period of time as a refresher from things that are being discussed by Mr. Petro and Mr. Kukul. And I returned just 24 hours ago. And since it was such a time change, I got on my computer and started catching up on emails and looking at articles. There were a stack of newspapers. There were emails that I read, and I have to say, frankly, I was appalled at what has transpired over the last 2 weeks. I was appalled at what I read. I was appalled at what I viewed on a major local television, from a major local television station. This has to stop. I mean, it's insanity. What I read last night and heard last night was insanity. I'm going to start, and let me begin. I'm going to read a prepared statement. And interestingly, I had no idea that Mr. Petro and Mr. Kukul were going to make statements that they just did, and mine mirror very closely what my two colleagues said. And I'm just going to read a line from the mayor's veto statement. He says, "Please remember that any other council dialogue outside a public meeting would violate open meeting laws." So just so everyone is clear, there was no dialogue that took place between Mr. Petro, Mr. Kukul, and myself, despite the fact that what you're about to hear is very similar. So, Mayor Delaquila has once again played his favorite hand and calls the council-sponsored charter amendment, which would allow only qualified electors of Seven Hills to circulate initiative, recall, or referendum petitions as, and I quote, politically motivated. And here we go with the P word. He says, "Council is," and I quote, and this came from the Gazette, by the way, "trying to make it on the firefighters because they don't like that petition circulated," referencing the firefighters' petition to mandate 5-man shifts. Mayor Delaquila says in his veto statement that it makes absolutely no sense, and this is in quote, "it makes absolutely no sense at all to alienate our firefighters with this ordinance when their support is essential to passing the levy." I couldn't agree more about passing the levy, that is. And then the Mayor Delaquila further says in his veto statement that this ordinance, and again in quotes, "this ordinance is widely viewed as retaliation against our firefighters for circulating a petition most of council doesn't like." Retaliation. Regarding my opinion of the charter amendment mandating 5-man shifts for the fire department, yes, Mayor, you are correct. Absolutely correct. I do not support this amendment, and I find it unnecessary as this is fully covered under the firefighters' collective bargaining agreement. And regarding your statement of retaliation, there's been no retaliation against Seven Hills firefighters, at least of which I am aware. To the contrary, I fully support our firefighters' position of 5-man shifts, and I've repeatedly stated so. And more importantly, and secondly, I also share the safety concerns and considerations of our Seven Hills firefighters. Regarding council alienating our firefighters with this ordinance, I have to say nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I'll go so far as to say I thank our firefighters for opening my eyes to some looseness in provisions to our charter. It's provided us on council an opportunity to tighten our wording when it applies to initiatives, which means, and this, ladies in the audience, you stole my thunder. I mean, I already said this once, but for your benefit, I'll say it again. Initiatives, that's the power to propose any ordinance or resolution. Our residents, our registered voters have that power given by our charter. Recall, they have that power. It's the power to remove from office by recall election any elected officer of the city. That's the second part of that. The third is referendum. And what that means is requesting that such ordinance, resolution, or other action, whether legislative or administrative in nature, be either repealed or submitted to a vote of the electors. So you have the opportunity, you have three unique powers. Residents, elected, registered voters have three unique powers provided to them by our charter. So I guess I have to ask Mayor Delaquila, did you really read Ordinance 93, 2016 fully? I guess falls on deaf ears. Do you understand Ordinance 93, 2016 fully? I'll take that as a no. And I'll venture to say that you have not, because if you had, you would clearly see that the petition process, and this is where I echo my two colleagues here, the petition process as it pertains to amendments to our charter is and remains unaffected. So in my view, the three instances of initiatives, recall, and referendum directly affect residents of Seven Hills. Outsiders, in my view, have no business or standing with these three rights of our electors as provided by our Seven Hills Charter. I fear because of your, and I mean Mayor Delaquila, your continuing negative statements to the press and local television, the damage done through lack of due diligence may be irreparably the fate of the loss of the fire levy. That fate may well have been sealed. Every step of the way this year, you've taken on the role of an obstructionist. And Mayor, I believe you become a poor soul who wants the city see the city crash and burn and take perverse pleasure in dancing around the funeral pyre. As from what I have seen, you have done nothing, and I mean nothing, to support either the fire or income levy, other than what you mentioned to me in the caucus room. You said, well, I made a statement that I was in support of the fire levy. And I guess, you know, and for the audience out there, for you residents that are viewing this live or going to view it as recorded, the mayor said that once. He said that one time. So your one and only optional solution to avoid total financial collapse of the city of Seven Hills is to unilaterally raise income tax through reduction of the tax credit. Now that's something that everyone seems to have, I don't know, swept under the rug or don't want to talk about, or maybe the mayor is embarrassed about it, but his plan was to raise income tax through a reduction of the tax credit without any voice of the electorate. I'll finish up by saying my experience has always told me nothing good ever happens without, and I mean without, hard work. With you, Mr. Mayor, it seems it's always on someone else's shoulder or the easy way. And frankly, Mr. Mayor, that doesn't cut it for me, and it doesn't cut it for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Frondorf. Is there any further comment? Okay, I will simply say that I agree full-heartedly with what Councilman Frondorf, Councilman Petro, and Councilman Kukrow just expressed. I also had a statement, but everything that I would be reading into the record is very similar to the sentiments that were just provided to us as well. The only thing that I will say briefly, though, is that the mayor's veto justifications are 100% wrong and not accurate. This charter change would not be to stop people that are not residents of Seven Hills from circulating charter amendment petitions. I'm going to reiterate, this is for referendum, recall, and initiative, period. So the things that we just read into the record from the mayor's veto statement do not apply to this at all, period. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 93, 2016 has passed and the mayor's veto has been overridden. We will now move on to ordinance number 94, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we suspend the rules on the charter and read ordinance number 94, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I will second that motion. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 94, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a comprehensive managed service agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with blank of blank, Ohio, to provide comprehensive managed services in support of the city of Seven Hills computers and all departments, covering the period of blank, and appropriating the sum not to exceed blank dollars for said service and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 94, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we pass ordinance number 94, 2016.
I will second that motion. Is there any discussion? I'll just mention that we need to clean up the books here and vote this ordinance down. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
No.
Frondor.
No.
Kukrow.
No.
Petro.
No.
Traffus.
No.
Bicker.
No.
Ordinance number 94, 2016 has been defeated. Moving on to ordinance number 96, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and amend ordinance number 96, 2016 by title only to adjust the amount from $44,814 to $54,912 to add cloud backup service in title and throughout the entire ordinance.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 96, 2016 has been amended. Is there a further motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read amended ordinance number 96, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 96, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a one-year comprehensive managed service agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with FIT Technologies of Cleveland, Ohio, to provide comprehensive managed services in support of the city of Seven Hills computers in all departments and appropriating the sum not to exceed $54,912 annually for said service and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 96, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we pass amended ordinance number 96, 2016.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? I'd just like to say that this is the IT company that we hired to replace Warwick. And over the past, month or so, a number of people have worked hard to find a new company that I believe will be a great fit for the city of Seven Hills. In particular, I want to thank Stuart Levis for the work he did, Ben, who also did quite a bit of work, and Councilman Kukrow as well. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 96, 2016 has been passed. Moving on to ordinance number 97, 2016.
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Frondor.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 97, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading and declaring an emergency.
I will second that. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 97, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and councilpersons Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Air Force One Incorporated of Valley View, Ohio, for the purpose of installing a new VAV box controller thermostat and for installation of a new VAV bypass damper actuator static pressure sensor at the City Seven Hills Recreation Complex with appurtenances and appropriating the sum not to exceed $7,000 for said purchase through the state term purchasing program and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 97, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Frondor.
I move that we pass ordinance number 97, 2016.
And I will second that. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 97, 2016 has passed. Council will now be open to the audience on anything you wish to discuss tonight. If you have any comments, please approach the podium and state your name and address. Is there anybody in the audience tonight? Okay. Moving on to such other business as may come before council. Let's go through the dais. All right, I'm going to turn the floor over to Clerk of Council Carol Sakarik.
I have a statement I'd like to read into the record. This is to the council of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio. I do hereby certify that certain initiative petitions providing for submission of a proposed charter amendment to Article 12, miscellaneous provisions, Section 9, minimum safety personnel, which reads, in the interest of public safety, to provide the citizens of the city of Seven Hills with adequate fire, rescue, and emergency services. At no time shall any city official, including the mayor as director of public safety, pursuant to Article 5, Section 5(4) of this charter, or by means of any city ordinance, staff the fire department of the city of Seven Hills with less than 5 regular firefighters per shift. This section shall take precedence over any conflicting city ordinance and shall only be superseded upon passage of a subsequent charter section. They've been examined by the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections and have been found to contain more than the required amount of signatures necessary to qualify as legal petitions, and therefore said petitions are determined to be valid. Pat McDonald, Director, Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, on August 19th, 2016, has certified to council the following. Number of valid part petitions were 40 in number. Invalid part petitions were 1. Number of valid signatures, 1,174. Number of invalid signatures, 205. Said certification form of the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections is on file in the office of the Clerk of Council for examination by any party interested therein.
Thank you, Carol. Let's start with directors. Service Director Levis.
Regarding ordinance 96, 2016, special thanks to mayor and council, and especially Councilman Kukrow and Ben Horton for their help in making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Law Director Pignatello.
I have a brief statement.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Mayor Delaquila.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly. We've just had more dialogue about ordinance 93, 2016 than the 10 minutes of debate that preceded its passage on August 8th. Unfortunately, most of tonight's commentary, both here and in caucus, was centered on the nature of a personal attack rather than the substance of the veto as written and presented to council. So effectively, the arguments presented really don't address the reason for the veto. The veto is based on one very simple premise, and that is this: that the support of our firefighters will be absolutely essential to the passage of that fire levy this coming November. It's absolutely critical that we pass that levy, and as I've said before and repeatedly said, I fully support that levy. Unfortunately, some on council find themselves trapped by their own words in tying the firefighters' petition to ordinance 93, 2016. I can't help that. It is what it is. And we need to move on from that. As I said in the veto, and I repeat again, placing this measure on the ballot at the same time as the fire levy will only increase the likelihood that it will not pass. We all agree that that money is needed, and we all need to work together for it and not put things on the ballot that will hurt its passage. It's really that simple. I want to address something also that came up in council caucus. I understand that there was a school board meeting last night in which one member, and again allegedly, I have this as third-hand information, one member of the board indicated that the board allegedly had reached out to the 3 mayors of the cities in the Parma City School District to participate in a meeting. I can tell you that I don't have any such notification. I'm pretty easy to reach. However, I can also state that we have met with Superintendent Hilling. We have been briefed on what's going on. We are anticipating and hoping that the board will be able to work out its difficulties in a manner that will be acceptable to everyone and will not work to the detriment of Seven Hills. I can also report that we have a follow-on meeting scheduled with the superintendent. I can only assume that since he's answerable to the board, that his meeting with the 3 mayors was with the knowledge and support of the board. If he hasn't reported back to them that those meetings have occurred, that may be something that should be addressed at that end. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Delaquila. We'll move on to council, and let's start this time with Councilman Biassiata.
I have no comment today.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Bicker.
No comment.
Thank you. Councilman Kukrow.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, it's only 2 pages. When this new council got elected by a mandate from its residents, I had hoped that we would be able to move past the ridiculous political motivated referendum that had plagued the city for years. I know for a fact that the residents wanted the finger pointing to stop because that's what they told me when I walked door to door, and that's what they're still telling me. Their vote of council said, enough is enough. Please stop with the nonsense and just move forward with a better Seven Hills. And that's what this council's been doing. We've picked up our lunch pails and we've gone to work without fanfare. We cut $400,000 from the mayor's proposed budget that spent 1.35 million more than it brought in. And all those cuts have not affected residents' daily lives one bit. Yet, the mayor and the majority of the previous council said it couldn't be done. We did it. And we're going to keep digging and asking the tough questions because that's our job, to ask the what ifs. And even if it ruffles a few feathers, that is what you voted for. And that is what we're giving you. But I'm really frustrated, and I think you can hear it in my voice. And I need to say it loudly and make sure that all residents understand that, unfortunately, your wishes are not being adhered to simply because our mayor, in my opinion, is trying to do everything he can to stop our city from being everything it can be. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's past political motivation from someone who doesn't want to see his political rivals win at any cost, even the cost of moving the city forward. I certainly hope that is not the case, but I cannot find any other explanation on why this is continuing to happen against your wishes. Did you know that the mayor has issued more vetoes in the last 8 months in response to council's push to change the city than had been issued by all city mayors over the last 20 years combined? So what does that tell you? It tells me that the mayor is attempting to block this council from doing what residents wanted us to do when they voted us in, which was and is to change the city and fix our problems and make it better. Now, I want to remind you there's a difference between checks and balances and obstructionism. If that's your plan, Mr. Mayor, I say to you, we tried it your way with your council in place, and look where it got us. Those days are gone. Residents want change, and you're standing in the way of it. I'm speaking up on this because I want residents to understand something. This council is trying to move this city forward, yet we keep getting attempts to obstruct that progress at every single turn. The worst of those obstructions is perpetuating the days of old political nonsense, like creating unwarranted and misleading media responses and trying to pit one group of people against another for his own agenda. For example, the recent news with the firefighters. Council is placing a levy on the ballot that will fully fund the fire department for the next 5 years. The mayor, instead of getting behind it and showing unity with council to pass it, is spending his time misleading residents by giving erroneous sound bites to reporters. One of them said, Seven Hills wants to block free speech. In a recent Cleveland.com post, the mayor said, the November ballot will include a proposed 1.6 million fire levy, asking voters to more than triple the current fire levy. Passing such a large increase will require the support of all our firefighters, especially since there are other tax issues on the ballot competing for the limited appetite of our voters with more taxation. What sense does it make to ask our firefighters to support this levy while we insult their hard work and dedication at the same time, end quote. Insult the firefighters? Mr. Mayor, we're trying to save the firefighters by fully funding their department and giving them every piece of equipment they need to keep our residents safe and keep full staffing. Why are you trying to create doubt with voters on this issue? Are you more concerned with seeing your political rivals fail than the future of our fire department and the residents' safety? Because it certainly appears that way. Why else do you continue to try and create division and, frankly, more unneeded and bad press for our city? I've really had about enough of this, and I believe residents have as well. Mr. Mayor, all you are doing is creating doubt in the minds of our residents. Should the fire levy fail, I will look squarely at you for the reason why. It's time to listen to what the residents want. It's time you end these political games and start getting behind residents' wishes and what this council has been tasked to do. I fear that if you do not, you will jeopardize the future of not only our fire department, but also the future of our city. Now, finally, I want to say something to our firefighters. You have friends here on council. We want to give you everything you need to run a fully funded department with full staffing, with new equipment when you need it, for the next 5 years. Peace of mind. I hope you realize that we're behind you and we want the same thing you do. And I'm assuming the rest of this council, are willing to go door to door with you, arm in arm with you for the next few months before this election to help make this levy pass. And it will pass if we work together. But the mayor wants you to believe council is your enemy and keeps perpetuating that over and over again. I hope you can see through this and see what he's trying to do. Every time he repeats that mantra, it creates doubt in the mind of voters that only weakens the passage of your levy. All to forward this political agenda against rivals he does not like or agree with. Now, I have to say this is very important. The consequences of this fire levy failing are too great. We have no more time for division. We have no more patience for the politics of the past. It's time to move the city forward. But we can't do that if we all don't start working together. Enough is enough. We have to put forth a clear and decisive strategy to fix Seven Hills. We have. And with the residents' support, it's going to work. The residents are on board. City council is on board. The firefighters are on board. The question is, are you on board, Mr. Mayor? Because it doesn't appear that you are. And if you can't get behind what we're trying to do, maybe it's time you step aside and let someone else do the job. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Kukrow. Councilman Petro.
I have no miscellaneous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Frondor.
Yes, I have, I'd like to, Jim, that was very well done. I mean, it can't be said more clearly. The one word that I picked up was mantra, okay? Yeah, that's exactly what's happened here. And I'm gonna read a line from the mayor's veto statement. He says, Seven Hills must stop stumbling along from one unforced error to the next, operating as some private fiefdom. First of all, it makes no sense to me unless you change Seven Hills to council, as a group, or the mayor as an entity. But Seven Hills doesn't stumble along, and it's impossible for them to stumble along. And it's impossible for Seven Hills to make unforced errors, one unenforced error to the next. And it's impossible for the city of Seven Hills to operate as some private fiefdom. However, the message that when you read between the lines, and that's what you have to do because this is what Mr. Kukrow was speaking to. It really, what's really being said here is that council must stop stumbling along from one unenforced error to the next, okay? Council, because you heard it from Mr. Kukrow. The mayor has vetoed more legislation in 8 months than previous mayors have collectively in the past 20 years. And operating as some private fiefdom, that I don't get at all. I mean, I don't get that. It makes no sense. Other than this is what the mayor believes, that he's not getting his way, and so he's going to do everything he can to demean and belittle and marginalize council. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Frondorf. My comment about the fire levy and its passage is simply that when incorrect interpretations are applied to the fire levy or anything regarding the fire department, and frankly with just about any proposal that council makes, that's the worry on whether or not this fire levy would pass. If people were told the truth and not lied to, I feel we wouldn't have a problem at all passing the levy. Now, my comments tonight are about my and most everyone's incredible frustration with the lack of attention to the Rockside Road development on the part of Mayor Delaquila and his constant innuendos and lack of support of the project. In a SunPost article dated August 15th, Mayor Delaquila expressed his concern that the Omni withdrawal is a serious setback to Seven Hills, and being extremely concerned with the financial implications of such, the insinuation that the new Planning Commission members may have difficulty meeting the challenges of tough, experienced developers, and that with Omni pulling out, that all financial projections have to be reworked. Well, for our residents' information and to answer the multitude of comments I have received, I want to add a much-needed perspective to the mayor's drama. Omni represented only a financial projection of $1 to $2 million of wages or $20,000 to $40,000 of income tax revenue compared to the $500,000 to $600,000 yearly projection of full development. This is a meager 4 to 5% on average. Hardly a deal breaker or a woe is me situation that the mayor is portraying. To add another perspective, even if the area was replaced with housing, which is not a proposal, and I am simply using as an illustration, the Omni property is about 20 acres in size and could easily handle 60 to maybe 80 dwellings. If a household has only a meager average income of about $50,000 of wage income, the income tax revenue alone would be $60,000 to $80,000. The sky is not falling, and I can guarantee you that the developers are working very hard to find proper replacements for the Omni property to conform to the PUD requirements that will be established by the city. This project has been met with resistance and little to no support from our administration. The most telling thing happened months ago at the Holiday Inn meeting when Mayor Delaquila refused on 2 occasions to address about 600 of our residents who were in attendance to learn about the project. This was embarrassing and a complete lack of leadership. Since then, we have been met with delays, quotes in the paper about how this project may not be good for Seven Hills, and an incredibly delayed response time from the mayor and many of his employees. Last week, the Planning Commission referred the PUD ordinance to City Council despite running into lack of response from the administration. And this can all be documented. This was a great step towards progress. Now, we need to establish a realistic timeline in order to pass the PUD ordinance. I'm requesting that the Law Department provide to City Council this week the steps that need to be taken in order to move forward, and also to begin creating a developer's agreement. Aside from the Rockside development, almost every issue is being met with obstruction from the mayor. Rick, whether you like it or not, our residents voted overwhelmingly for a new direction for our city. The past 12 years of leadership clearly did not work, and we are financially suffering from the poor decisions today. Big changes are being made. Some things are popular with our residents, some things not as popular. We as a city council are moving forward with wholesale changes to Seven Hills. The status quo has not worked, and we are breaking it. It's time that you get on board and start offering concrete, well-thought-out suggestions in a timely basis and quit being an obstructionist on so many issues. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes,
Bicker.
Yes.
meeting is adjourned.
Slit his wrist. Has to do it tomorrow. I don't think he wants to do it today. Huh? Hmm?
Better watch out.
Turn that machine
When I'm done, huh? They needed that. Did you ever, Elaine was with it. Nice Indian address. I can't remember. You know, I got it sitting on my desk. I got it sitting on. And it may have gone down now. It might have blown because of the heat, you know, because that was,